Well, we're back, and we were talking about Fox Hill when we left just before the break. And Fox Hill is an extremely strong community as it relates to their African heritage. Fox Hill was established, according to the archives, in 1831. But what I like about it is sometime in the early 1830s, Fox Hill was established. It is unfortunate that I don't think there is a specific date for the establishment of any of these 5 towns. It's around this and sometime, because they never thought it was important enough to record it. You see? And that's the sad thing. The people of the Bahamas are made up of Afro-Bahamian stock primarily, and Euro-Bahamian stock. But the Afro-Bahamian history was never given the same level of prominence as the Euro-Bahamian. In schools, we learn about Sir Walter Raleigh, Sir Francis Drake, and a lot of them.
Ponce de Leon.
Ponce de Leon and all of them. I mean, many of them were gangsters of their time.
Terrorists.
And terrorists of their times.
Yes.
We know that. But we knew more about them than we knew about our own ancestors and those people who were of great importance, like, for instance, Elijah Morris, like, for instance, Pompey, and many others. But nobody taught it to us, and that's why I say it is up to us. And Fox Hill has done a good job. Fox Hill, they say, was established around 1831, but the record shows that Samuel Fox was given, some 200 acres of land in the creek. And that was the beginning of Fox Hill. And that's about all you have. We do not have, if you go to the history in Gambia, just what you said basically is what is recorded. Adelaide, basically the same thing. That's all that is recorded. As rich as these places were. Bain, Grantstown, and Grantstown, same thing.
And Gambia was at one time was on top of the situation.
That's right.
Whereby everybody was coming to Gambia. From Adelaide.
That's right.
Delaport, Baintown, Grantstown, Fox Hill. Everybody, it was Gambia.
Well, that's why we have to take the responsibility to ensure that it is maintained. When you look at Grantstown, Grantstown was the one town that was different from the others. Grantstown was started by the government. Grantstown was a government development.
Yeah.
Because after 1783, when the Loyalists came with all their slaves, and the black population began to explode, because until then, the black population lived on the premises of their white masters. A little house, little shack in the back somewhere. But when the black population began to explode, the white people felt that they could not accommodate that number of black people in what was known as the city of Nassau. And so they petitioned the House of Assembly and they passed laws that black people had to live outside of the town. And so the governor at the time, Governor Lewis Grant, commissioned that a town be laid out for black people on the south side of the town of Nassau. That's Grantstown. And that's where many of the slaves, freed slaves, congregated in Grantstown, and it exploded in growth. That spillage necessitated the establishment of Baintown, which is much smaller. But Baintown is a private development. Baintown was purchased by Alexander and his half-brother Henry Bain, purchased outright and subdivided into small lots for slaves. So Baintown was a private development. Adelaide, Gambia, and Fox Hill, the slaves just went there and they just developed it. But Grantstown was a government development. And watch this, the evidence is clear, you know. the streets in Grandstown, look at Grandstown. Grandstown is bordered on the west roughly by Blue Hill Road.
Yes.
On the east by Collins Wall, Shirley Street, and say Wolf Road. The streets are all straight.
Yeah.
Blue Hill Road, Market Street, East Street, all straight. And then the cross corners, all straight. And roughly equidistant apart from each other. Why?
Because it was probably designed.
It was designed, it was
Well
laid out
planned, yeah.
by J.J. Burnside,
Yes.
who was then the Surveyor General. So he knew how to lay out towns. And he laid out Grandstown. And Grandstown is a properly laid out town. There are no dead ends, no curves and cul-de-sac where you get in and you can't get.
Yeah.
Everything goes straight
Straight.
through. Straight through. So Grandstown should have been the model of what town should be. And Grandstown was established, they say, around about 1825. But people were living there before that. But that's when they say it was established. No month, no nothing. They say somewhere in 1825. Bain Town was about 20 years, 25 years later. But we have to understand as residents of these towns the history of these towns. The history is so important. I saw in the newspaper today, and I wrote it down so that I don't make a mistake. The Ministry of Tourism is saying the Bahamas wants 15% increase in African American travel. Well, one sure way of getting that is to elevate the history of the enslaved people, because that is such a direct, relationship with the experience of the African American United States.
Yep.
So when they talk about Afro-American travel, I believe the Afro-Americans would be far more prepared to come and see Gambia and see what their ancestors basically were related to. They don't have a great opportunity to see it where they live in many cases, because they didn't preserve them like that.
No.
So if we could preserve them in Adelaide and in Gambia and in Fox Hill and in Baintown and Grandstown, I believe, and this is just my opinion, that African Americans will want to come and see it. As a matter of fact, we can market it directly to them. Come and see how your cousins lived in the Bahamas in the 1800s. You see what I'm saying? Take them to the well. Where's the well?
Right on the waterfront. Mm-hmm. It's right on Fernanda Road, on the boundary of Fernanda and West Bay Street.
And the well is there.
The well is
Take
there.
the people to the well. Where's the oven
It's on the park.
that they used to bake bread and stuff? Take them to the oven. They want to see these things. They want to relate to these things. And so, if the Ministry of Tourism is going to have a chance at achieving that objective, they're going to have to do something to make the African American want to come to the Bahamas. And then there was another story in that same newspaper that said Super Club Breeze's owner said, he warned that we'll all go hungry if we don't expand airlift. In other words, bringing more visitors. Once again, visitors come to an attraction.
Yes.
Yep, they do.
And there are things in Adelaide that could attract them.
Well, like I said before, I worked for Bahamas National Trust to a park out west called Primeval Forest. And there's countless amount of visitors that come there every year. And the one thing they always ask is, where are the historical buildings?
That's right.
Where are the historical villages? And what's happening in those historical villages? Why can't we enter and see pieces of history?
That's right.
Right, and it dawned on me in the middle of last year that there's basically hardly anything that we could actually go and show them besides the Anglican Church. One or two broken buildings are not there, but they aren't protected, they aren't serviced or anything maintained in any manner whatsoever besides the church. And so it's one of the reasons why we're pushing the reform the Adelaide Committee. And it's one of the things that I'm personally looking forward to, because in the past there was no bridge between the elderly and the next generation, and that's the reason why the Adelaide celebrations had stopped, because that bridge wasn't there. No one was being taught about their history and the importance of redoing the events every year, and it's kind of hurtful for me to see that.
Yeah, it is sad. And do you think, for example, the designating of certain buildings as historical buildings, which would prevent persons, whomever, from destroying them, seriously altering them, that they could stand as a source of attraction to people? Like you said, the people want to know the historical buildings.
Definitely. I mean, that's one of the things that people come to Bahamas for. In fact, I've heard huge complaints from tourists, whether they be of European descent or African descent, about the fact that it's become too American centralized, too touristy, this island of New Providence. And my thing is that we must do something to preserve our past, our history, else it will be completely erased.
That's right.
And if we do not protect these historic buildings, they're going to be destroyed, and they're going to build subdivisions or housing on top of them.
Well, that's why we in Bain Grantstown are making a major push beginning this year to revive the interest, first of all, in that part of our history. It's a dark part. That's okay. It's fact. As they say on the street, it is what it is. And so we have a number of activities for the next few days. Today we had the wreath laying ceremony, which I was so proud to see you there, at the Southern Recreation Ground, which is an historic site. So what we did, our association officers and the community, some of the community leaders, we assembled at that iconic spot, and we reflected on the experience of our ancestors. And we said prayers for those who died in pursuit of freedom. And we laid a wreath to the memory of those who died, because each one who died made it possible in some small way for us to be here, to be free, and to enjoy what we are enjoying in this country. So that took place today, and it was amazing. We had selected a site, and just as we were about to start, the heavens opened and the rain came. Why? Because the real significant site is the little rotunda, the little stage that was used over the many decades in the fight against oppression. And it was the place that we should have used, but it was falling into disrepair. And so we thought we'd just use an open space, but we believe, somebody said God wanted us to go on that site, because that is one of the most historic sites in New Providence, because it was on the Southern Recreation Grounds that most of the rallies, the demonstrations, the marches, the prayer meetings, the cookouts used to occur on a Sunday night. Reverend Dr. S. Colebrook from St. Paul Church would take his congregation there. Then a few minutes later, Reverend Dr. H.W. Brown from Bethel would bring his congregation.
That's right.
A few minutes later, Dr. Ari Cooper from Hay Street would bring his congregation. And they would have church praying for this nation, praying for the freedom of people. And not only physical freedom, political freedom, economic freedom, social freedom. And so that was a historic site, and we were driven to the very spot where these great men stood. And we got wet, but it was all right. We enjoyed it. And then on this coming Sunday, we're having a Thanksgiving service at Wesley Methodist Church on Blue Hill Road and Chapel Street. And that is very symbolic, because Wesley Methodist Church was formed originally by slaves, freed slaves. They were the original members of Wesley Methodist Church. And we're going there to have a wonderful time as we think of the dark past, and as we thank God for delivering our ancestors, and also to ask God to bless this nation as we go forward, because it's very important that we bring our history into our present to be able to take it into the future. And then on the 15th of August, we're having a lecture at the College of the Bahamas, rather the University of the Bahamas, and they're collaborating with us because the university resides within our community.
Yes.
And we wish to congratulate the president, Dr. Rodney Smith, and his administrators, the whole family there at the University of the Bahamas, because we are working collaboratively on a number of things in recognition that they are a part of us. And so we are jointly hosting this lecture. And the topic is From Africa to Bahamas. And we've got distinguished presenters presenting from various perspectives. One will be presenting from the perspective of the history, the history along the way. One will be presenting on the culture, and the other will be presenting on the religion, how it has changed, how it has become what it is today from what it used to be. That's going to be significant, and that's the 15th of August, 6 to 8 p.m. in the library auditorium. So folks, you will not hear more comprehensive, accurate, interesting information than you will hear at that lecture. When people hear just some of the things, put their hand to their mouth. One of the young ladies who was at the wreath-laying ceremony a few hours ago, she was amazed. She was born and lived in New Providence all of these years. Never heard those things before. And so it is very important for families, and we say families, to come, bring all of the children, because it's the children, as Christophe just said, we have to pass it on to the next generation. And that's where we have failed.
Visibly.
Very much so.
You know, Marcus Garvey once said that if we as a people realize the greatness from whence we came, we'll be less likely to disrespect ourselves.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Marcus Garvey, but Marcus Garvey launched his Back to Africa movement from the Southern Recreation Grounds, the same place we've been today.
Wow.
You know, he left Jamaica, he was a Jamaican, on his way to New York to launch that movement, which was supposed to be based in the United States. But the US government saw that this black movement was gathering steam, and they wanted to nip it in the bud, so they refused him a visa to go to New York from Nassau. And like all great men, he just improvised. He said, I cannot go to New York where I have followers waiting for me to make this announcement, so I'll make the announcement in Nassau. And he went to the Southern Recreation Grounds, and he officially launched his Back to Africa movement. You know, and it tells us of the importance of that site. People like Martin Luther King, these people went there, everybody went there. Southern Recreation Ground, which was the cradle of all progressive movement. All of the political changes
came through that area.
Came right through that area. And that is why we in Bain Grandstown see it as an obligation to ensure that generations of Bamians to come will not forget those who suffered and those who, and I'm talking centuries ago as well as more recently, we had a lot of Bahamians who suffered for the progressive results that we enjoy today. And we say to a lot of people, don't look at today's politicians who are viewed as just living, you know, high off the hog and off the fat of the land. No, no. A lot of our Bahamian brothers and sisters suffered. Some of them died broke and destitute because they gave their all in the fight to free our people. That's what I would prefer to remember as opposed to the few who may have lost their way.
Yeah.
I prefer to focus on those who through blood, sweat, and tears, they stayed the course. And what we're trying to do now is to say to people who are descendants of the African people, we are no longer in physical slavery.
Mental.
But we're carrying a lot of baggage. And we are saying, let's look at freedom, not only in the sense of physical freedom, but in the sense of economic, social freedom. Let's look in the sense of us getting together as one people. At this stage, notwithstanding color, creed, religion, politics, we have to lead this nation to the level of greatness that God had designed for us.
Yes.
And we can do it. We will do it. So I know you're having, Brother Fernando, an activity in Gambia. You have the date at hand? A fun activity, a fair, something, sometime?
I don't have it with me now.
Yes, okay. We had the president on our radio show, Melissa Monroe.
Yes.
And the vice president, Brother Smith from Gambia. We had them on our radio show and they were talking about, and we're trying to encourage all of these former slave villages. Let's get moving, man. And being linked together will make us stronger. And we expect for all of the 5 towns to be represented at the service, and representatives from the various organizations in these towns will be participating in the service, because we are one people. We don't have the luxury of you going your way. How far can a group of 400 really get? There's strength in numbers. And so we'll go to you one day, we'll go, as you said in the past, go to Gambia the next day, go to Fox Hill and work with them, and come to Bain Town. And Bain Town and Grandson are just lately trying to get on board. We want to thank you all for keeping the fire burning until we saw the light. And mind you, all of us haven't seen the light yet. Some of us still looking at the bright lights of the US and whatever they see, their music, their food, their dress, and their speech and everything. But we're trying to say to our people, you know, don't go to Florida for 3 weeks and come back speaking American.
No.
You know, have some pride in your own culture. We have a lot of people, particularly our young men on the streets. You listen to them, they're talking more Jamaican. They've never been Jamaican, you know?
No.
Never put foot in Jamaica. But they talk Jamaican better than the Jamaican who was born and raised in Jamaica. Something got to be wrong with that. And we are saying that when you know where you've come from, you will develop that pride that will motivate you to excel. But if you don't have that pride, then whether you excel or not really doesn't make much difference.
No.
Let's have some closing remarks because we're just about ready to wrap up, Brother Christoph. What would you like to see going forward, not only for Adelaide, but for the entire Bahamas as it relates to this topic we're talking about?
As it right now stands, our nation is at a crossroad where if we don't do anything about displaying our history, our past, we're going to lose our culture as a whole. We're going to become Americanized, and I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen people leave for school and have no desire of coming back. Mm-hmm. And it's up to us, my generation in particular, but also your generation, and your generation as well, to pass that knowledge, that information on to us, so we could preserve it for future generations to come, so we could protect our history, our culture. So 5,000 years down the road, a young people would know exactly what went on today and what went on 50 years ago. And that's what I want to see. Us as a nation, knowing our culture, preserving our heritage, and passing that information on to the generations to come.
Brother Fernando, what would you like to see? I mean, Gambia and the Bahamas.
For the whole entire Bahamas, I feel as though history has been distorted.
Yes.
We have, for our kids, no hardly any history of the Bahamas, of the activities, what has been going on here. The fight that we have heard, even with our political fights between the original, the UBP and the FNM and the PLP, you know, there's nothing left that we have that our children will understand the strife and the plunders that we had to go through to arrive where we are today.
That's right.
And it's sad because we, like you said before, we've been taught about British history, American history, but when it came down to our Bahamas, but our Bahamian history, we have nothing really to teach our children.
But you know, we're not only talking about history, and I'll just briefly touch on this. Right now, on West Hill Street, that's the street that goes west from Government House, connecting with West Street by St. Francis. You go through there and you watch them. They are creating what they call a heritage village. There's a sign up there, Heritage Village. But West Hill Street is not where the Bahamians lived. West Hill Street is where the slave masters lived. West Hill Street was where the slave masters lived. And so if they were going to display anything about West Hill Street, they should get the stocks that they used to hold the slaves in. You understand? They should get the whips that they used to put on the slaves' backs. But no, they get the slave things, they get our things. And now they're trying to pass off that area as a natural heritage village. You watch that? Look at West Hill Street. Whereas just south of that is where the real village is, nothing is happening. And I notice our government is quick to assist them whenever they want the police band to perform, whenever they want the streets to be painted up and change and adjust, the government is ready.
Right away.
But when the people in the real villages seek help little, well, we have to challenge that.
That is one of the problems that we have within Gambia. It's been, for some reason, poorly represented.
Well,
we have a school whereby that was built by Sarios. When we look around to see what has been done for the physical structure of Gambia, we have got a clinic that was built there. We have a park that was donated.
well,
And very little else has been done.
Well, this is an ongoing discussion we must have. And this discussion is that we are not going to allow imposters to come in and take possession of our history, our heritage, and trade it to the visitors. If the visitors want to see how the slave masters function, they should go to West Hill Street or Charlestown. But they're not going to tell the visitor that. They're going to want the visitor to believe that that is a typical Bahamian village. You were saying?
Yes, one thing that I'm proud of, we have, you know, the lady that was spearheading some of the functions that was going on there for the young ladies in Gambia. We have another group that, a young man they come together now and they're trying to form a men's association.
Well, these are the things we must be ongoing. We're going to be back on this show because this is just the beginning. We should like to thank you, Brother Fernando, Brother Christophe, for coming out. And next time we are going to be coming with much better results from our activities in these communities. And so, folks, we trust that you enjoyed just a glimpse of the history of enslaved people in the Bahamas, the plans that we have to really educate our people and turn this whole thing around. We should be making money from this. We already suffered. We already suffered for it. It's time that we start making money. when they abolished slavery in 1834, after that, the British government gave what in today's money was billions of dollars to the slave owners to compensate them for
Their
losing their
losses,
slaves,
yeah.
but they didn't give a cent to the slaves. So now it's the duty, the obligation of the descendants of the slaves to now start making money from that whole chapter in our lives. Thank you all, folks. We trust you enjoyed it, and we'll be with you again next week. Have a good evening.
Only love can save us now. Only love.